Flash floods. A sudden storm traps motorists, and rescuers attempt to save their lives. Tornadoes.
My God, it's gonna hit us!
When people are swept up by a twister, a few live to tell the tale.
It felt like you was getting body slammed, and I was digging and praying and hollering.
Hail. Thunderstorms darken Texas skies, unleashing frightening fastballs of ice.
All we could do is huddle and hope for the best.
Powerful storms, and the people who survived them, coming up on Storm Warning. It's a stormy spring day in central Texas. Thunderstorms spawned by colliding weather fronts crisscross the state, deluging some areas, passing over others. Highway 51 outside Dallas is dry as Judy Duncan tows her camping trailer home. A weekend outing with her mother has been cut short by heavy rains, part of a massive storm system that pours tons of water into a creek under the highway. As Judy drives, the rain that can't be absorbed swells into a flash flood that rushes toward the road up ahead.
You couldn't see any water. Unfortunately, if it had, we would have definitely gone another direction.
Trouble begins when the women come to a detour sign that directs them into what is normally a dry creek bed. As Judy heads down the embankment, she begins to realize she may have made a mistake.
We probably got into 4 or 5 inches of water and then decided to go back. And then we were stopped. Then the water started rising very quickly.
The fast-moving waters stall the engine of Judy's truck. Both vehicles are quickly trapped by rising floodwaters. Fire Captain Malcolm Foster remembers that day.
When we have flash floods like this, the water does rise fairly quick. I've seen it before, but not to the degree of feet in like minutes. Like in 2 or 3 minutes, it rose like 1.5 feet, 2 feet.
Flash floods like this are common in the American Southwest. Every spring, as the seasons change from winter to summer, warm air from the lower atmosphere collides with cold air at higher elevations. The severe storms that result can dump up to 3 to 4 inches of rain in 1 hour.
I believe probably in 15 or 20 minutes, the water was at least a third way up the driver's side door, or halfway, and the water was pounding on the door, you know, raging.
Judy's truck and trailer are no match for the relentless deluge. As the creek rises, each foot of water exerts at least 500 pounds of force on the vehicles, enough to sweep them downstream.
The water was lapping over the top of the Suburban, and that was pretty high. It rose very quickly. I'd say in 45 minutes, it was covering the car.
As the truck threatens to go under completely, an onlooker calls 911.
Water rescue channel support 12.
Captain Foster and the local volunteer fire department respond to a swift water rescue call. The engine company arrives within minutes, and Foster is faced with a quickly deteriorating situation.
When me and Al pulled up onto the bridge, emotions were that I was fixing to watch 2 women die right in front of me from high water. I felt at that time that I had to act on it as quickly as possible.
Captain Foster devises a plan to use a fire department ladder truck as a crane. He is hoisted 75 feet out over the raging floodwater. A man dangling on a rope is now the trapped women's only hope of survival.
We couldn't even see the bridge except through a certain spot. So when the fire truck came out, we felt good. And the next thing I remember was this crash on the back window.
I busted out the back window, and I step on the back bumper, and I crawl in there. And here was two of the calmest women I've ever met in a situation like they were in.
As onlookers watch anxiously, Captain Foster is in the truck with the women, helping them put on life jackets and rescue belts. Tense moments pass as the three are obscured inside the truck and the waters keep rising. It's only a matter of time before the truck and trailer are swept downstream. Because the ladder's not designed to be used horizontally, there's concern that the weight of 3 people could overturn the truck. Captain Foster decides to take one woman at a time.
All of a sudden, they picked both of us up, and I had no earthly idea how they were doing this, because the way we were tied in, we weren't planning on picking us up by manpower.
Foster's colleagues pull on the ladder with all their weight to swing the dangling pair back to safety. When we come back, a daring rescue over raging floodwaters continues. And people who survive being swept up by a tornado. As Texas firefighter Malcolm Foster starts a daring flash flood rescue, his ladder strains under the weight.
The ladder had bowed, and there was a little bit slack in the water. And I was trying to communicate, but I couldn't because we were swinging.
As the pair swings toward dry land, other rescuers rush to assist. Judy Duncan has been brought to safety, but her mother is still trapped out in the raging floodwaters. Despite exhaustion, Captain Foster ropes up again.
Okay, there were some times when I felt like during the rescue that it wasn't going to be successful, but I knew it had to be done, and I had to go back.
I remember Captain Foster carrying us to safety. That was really exciting because we were going over a raging river, and of course I didn't know the problems they were having with it, but it was something else.
Judy and her mother are lucky. Almost all the people who were killed in flash floods got in trouble in their cars.
We didn't realize the problem we had been in, the threatening situation, and it scared us to death. We had no idea.
4 years later, a storm of equal power swells another river in central Texas. Driver Thomas Newton and his 2 passengers, Cynthia White and Renee Williams, have come to grief on a short bridge over another creek near Dallas.
We told him not to go across that bridge. He was saying he can make it. And so he started across. And at first, everything was going fine. Then all of a sudden, we just started moving off the bridge.
Halfway across, the force of the water carried the car towards a deadly whirlpool until debris stopped its slide. Once again, a fire truck ladder is used as an instant bridge to aid the stranded motorists. With the help of rescuers, Renee, Cynthia, and Thomas slowly make their way up the rungs to safety.
Yeah, I'm lucky. Real lucky, because I was scared to death and I can't swim. I probably would have drowned.
Drivers can lose control of their cars in as little as 6 inches of water. Thomas Newton has joined the ranks of thousands of other drivers who have underestimated the water's power.
I see my whole life flashing before my eyes. I sure did. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Today, Spring Creek flows at its normal trickle. 5 years after her brush with a flash flood, Judy Duncan returns to the scene with her rescuer.
No, we got some.
She has hard-won advice for people who attempt to drive through rising floodwaters.
Keep your eyes open and look around before you go down to any kind of a low crossing. Be careful and look. Had we known, we would never have gone down into that area at all. Too dangerous.
Up next, a deadly tornado sucks a man out of his car. And the dangerous force of hail. In Twister country, they call tornadoes the devil's tail.
My God, it's gonna hit us!
It's coming right towards our house.
And people learn early to get out of the way.
Come on, let's go!
You got everything turned off?
Yes! Get away with the windows! Get away! Get away! Get away!
Most who don't survive. But a few have a tale to tell.
It was kind of like somebody picked you up and tosses you, but you're just kind of floating, you know, through the air.
Sheriff Donnie Joe Yancey's tale begins on an April afternoon in Izard County, Arkansas. Despite scattered warnings, the weather doesn't seem threatening.
It was a pretty normal day. We had had a weather warning from the Weather Service that a tornado warning was out and one had been spotted west of Mountain View, which is not far from here.
Then Yancey's radio crackles to life.
We got a large tornado on the ground right now.
He pulls off the road to warn a family friend.
When I stopped the Jeep, almost immediately, everything stopped. It just got dead still. I looked around, I thought, oh my gosh, you know, I'm really in for it here.
That's when the sheriff finds himself facing down a twister.
Everything just kind of happened all at once. It was like he had 2 or 3 different winds. One was blowing from behind my Jeep onto this tree and blowing it down, just straight over, and the other one was just making this other tree do all kinds of weird things. My Jeep started bouncing. 3 windows just popped out, just boom, boom, boom. It blew me out of the Jeep. It was like somebody just pick you up, you know, and throw you, and it threw me across the road. Like I couldn't touch the ground. It felt like you was getting body slammed. And I was digging and praying and hollering and everything else I could think of.
Yancey becomes another piece of flying debris inside the Devil's Tail.
There's a debris cloud coming up from the ground because it's lifting dirt and houses and cows, whatever, from the ground. That's a tornado.
Meteorologist Joshua Werman studies the winds and debris clouds that twisters generate. For 2 years, he chased tornadoes with Project Vortex, the most ambitious field study ever attempted.
Some of the most exciting days of my life were really the days where we got close up to these tornadoes for the first time.
Using portable Doppler technology, Werman captured radar images that tell us exactly what happens inside the Devil's Tail.
It's a very wrapped up structure, and there's a donut-type structure forming at the end. You see a very clear eye in the center. Surrounding that is a cone-shaped region of debris, just being lifted up by the very intense winds.
The tornado's complex winds carried Sheriff Yancey 30 feet and dropped him in a ditch.
It was like somebody just took a big hand and just mashed me down. There was so much running through my head. I thought I was gone. I mean, I thought this is it. This is the end.
Yancey survived with minor injuries. Others who ride the Devil's Tail lose much more. On a winter afternoon in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, Kim Kelch drives home to her daughter, Kaylin.
I just had a funny feeling just to go home quicker, even though I was headed that way. It was just, you know, something that said get home.
Kelch arrives home just as an unexpected twister approaches. She frantically pushes her daughter and the 2 family dogs into the only shelter she sees, a bedroom closet.
We're going into the closet, you can hear the windows popping. And by the time I pushed her in, got the dogs in, and I closed the door, the house basically was gone.
It once was thought that tornadoes destroyed houses through rapid pressure change. Werman has another idea.
If you even look at videos that the military has taken of nuclear explosions, you can basically see as the 200 or 300 mile an hour wind that the nuke makes comes by, those dwellings appear to explode. But I don't think, looking at them in slow motion, that it's the low pressure that does it. I think it's just getting blown apart. Houses appear to explode because they're hit with 200 mile an hour winds, but it's not just because there's lower pressures inside the tornado.
The blast of wind blows Kim Kelch's house apart as she blacks out. Only later does she learn that she and her daughter were hurled into the twister's core.
I kind of look at it as not being able to remember like a blessing in a sense, because I think with that probably would come a terror of, oh my gosh, this was coming at me and that was coming at me, not being able to see.
The next thing she remembers is lying on the ground beside her daughter. 260-mile-an-hour winds had thrown them more than 300 feet through the air.
We were like missiles, so to speak, right out of the house, from the closet out into this area. We landed over in this way. The house is over here.
People are probably hurt many times by either debris or by things collapsing on them. Wind doesn't hurt you. It's the 2x4 that's in the wind that hurts you.
I had a lot of the markings on my back, which some of it they thought fit like the 4x4s, as far as the way the abrasions and the deep groove sensation of being hit. And in fact, I've got scars down my back because it took a really bad beating.
All in all, more than 54 homes were demolished by the powerful tornado. Few people survived the nightmare of a direct encounter with a twister.
It's changed me quite a bit. I take more time for my family and, try to do some things with them. And because it makes you realize how quick you can be gone.
Looking at each day, like, hey, this may be your last. You appreciate the finer things in life. Family, friends, neighbors, that's what counts. Basically, it's learning how to appreciate life itself.
A lesson in life, gained in a brush with death, in the wild chaos weather can create. Next, hundreds of people are pummeled by dangerous fast balls of ice. Each spring, thunderstorms bring hail to north-central Texas, which sustains millions of dollars of damage to crops and property. But hail poses danger to people as well. In May of 1995, there have already been 15 hailstorms in 2 months. So Fort Worth residents ignored dark, ominous skies to gather at the city's favorite country fair, the annual Mayfest celebration. Mike Foster, Regional Warning Coordinator of Severe Weather for the National Weather Service, is glued to his Doppler screen, on the lookout for hail.
As thunderstorms began to develop, there was a squall line moving about 100 miles west of Fort Worth.
The squall line being picked up on radar is a continuous line of thunderstorms. What's worse is evidence of supercells, the largest and most destructive of thunderstorms.
Around 5:30 in the evening, 1 or 2 isolated cells began to develop some 30 or 40 miles to the east of that squall line. It became pretty evident that we were likely going to have a severe weather situation.
Suddenly, gale force winds unloosed torrential rains on the farms outside Fort Worth. As the storm approaches city limits, roads turn into rivers. In the supercell's turbulent updraft, raindrops freeze and refreeze into lethal pellets. Now, more ominous data appears on Mike Foster's weather equipment.
Based on the environment that the storm was growing in, we issued a warning immediately indicating hail in excess of 2.5 inches.
But many ignore Foster's warning, and soon they'll have reason to regret it. The supercell begins dumping a 3-mile-wide barrage of heavy hail. TV News photographer Kevin Schaefer gets an urgent assignment.
Unit 13, Fort Worth News. Remember, it was raining very hard. A report came over the radio that the west side of Fort Worth was getting hit with hail. So we were sent out to go cover it.
The storm has built up tremendous power and is headed directly for the Mayfest, where over 10,000 people are outside, unprotected. Cameraman Schaefer is almost to the fair when he drives straight into the hailstorm. Loss of visibility forces motorists to pull over. Schaefer and a producer are trapped in their car as the storm's violence escalates.
Get in the back seat. Get in the back seat. Cover your eye.
These are lethal fastballs, hurled over 90 miles per hour.
The easiest way to describe being in the car would be having somebody put a steel drum canister over you and having about 50 guys throw rocks at it for 3 or 4 minutes.
Back at the weather center, Mike Foster gets disturbing news.
Suddenly one of the radios crackled alive, one of the spotters reporting that he was going to have to suspend the duties he was currently involved in storm spotting and go help with the triage that had been set up down in the vicinity of the Mayfest.
The unprotected fairgoers have been hammered.
I started crying big time, not because it hurts, just because I was scared.
All we could do is huddle and hope for the best.
I covered her with my body, and then when the hail let up, we could both, I don't know what happened to her mother.
The newsman and his producer sit stunned and covered with glass.
I did not think it would be this extreme.
As others venture outside.
Small hail, and then people start taking cover, and then it got bad. I mean, we went from like this to this, get to this, and then to this, and within 2 minutes.
The only thing that could have been worse than that is if the storm had continued to strengthen its circulation and produce a tornado.
Survivors feel lucky to have survived baseball-sized hail, capable of killing. Over 200 people at the Mayfest are injured by the storm, which now moves toward Dallas. While rain causes severe flooding, lightning triggers numerous fires. Daylight shows the full extent of the storm's damage. The devastating path a hailstorm leaves behind is called a hail streak, and in this one lie buildings full of broken glass. Cars left outside are hit the hardest. A squad of brand new police cars is dinged, dented, and smashed. When the damage is tallied, the storm's price tag is almost $2 billion. It's the third most destructive storm in U.S. history, and the costliest thunderstorm ever, in a year when frequent hailstorms led people to ignore Mike Foster's warnings.
The year that this storm took place, we issued somewhere around 1,200 warnings during that year. We think that people probably have become numb to the announcement of the severe thunderstorm warning. We may need to have a far greater sensitivity to all of the outdoor events that are going on.
In this case, the outdoor event was Mayfest.
Ma'am, it's canceled. It's over.
It's over, but the citizens of Fort Worth will not soon forget the destructive power of hail.